please sitteth down, but just be seated, okay? Two behind-the-scenes things. Number one, putting together the bulletins the last several weeks. We lose her this week because she actually gets a real paying job. But I wanted to give a shout-out to Aniston, who's been coming in on Tuesdays and functioning as an intern. What do we call her? The intern college assistant parish administrator. Thank you. May you receive in your real job much more than we were able to give you. Enjoy it. And the other thing, just to know, sometimes you're amazed at the traits of people. You'd be surprised how beautifully that gospel would have been read by Bridget. I asked her to sight read the gospel before the service, and she read it much better than I did. So you never know the hidden talents we have. Bridget, you did a beautiful job. They didn't hear it, but I did. I was incredibly impressed. And this is not the easiest material to sight read, as you can obviously tell. All right, I'm not going to give you a lecture about the history of the parish. You can read Paul Bissonnette's book. So I'm going to try to tie the scriptures together and ask ourselves some questions about us as a parish, us as contemporary Christians. And I'll start with a story that a lot of you know. And that is, there is this, and those who went to Bible study this year are very familiar with this. There is a very long, very difficult book in the Old Testament. It's part of a section which we call today wisdom literature. It's written in poetry. It's a parable. It's a story. And the name of the book is the Book of Job. And in this story, the author creates this horrific scenario of a decent human being where everything in his life goes wrong. He literally loses everything. He is in such agony, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. He is dumped on high. I'll make the Mets remark and we'll get over that. He is to Major League Baseball what the Mets are, all right? That which is trapped under our feet. And in the course of the book, as we kind of plod our way through it, some very important questions get posed. The questions of, what is God like? And why is there suffering if there is a God? And why is there suffering if God is? And what is my relationship with God? What is it supposed to be like? How does God see me and how should I see God? And the author gives us a very humbling answer. We plod through 40 chapters of very difficult poetry. And in the end, as the author tells the story, he has the character of Job standing there after he has been complaining and yelling and demanding to be heard, wanting his day in court, putting God on trial, righteously, in our opinion, angry at what's going on. And the voice of God comes out of the storm, or in the King James Version you heard it, the whirlwind. And the voice says simply this, okay, human, mortal, shut up. Who are you to question me? This is the answer. And if any of you are getting the flashback to that scene in Taxi Driver of, are you talking to me? That's exactly what he's hearing. All right? How long have you been alive? Do you have the long-term view of creation? Do you know what creation's purpose is and how you fit into it? Or the people who lived ahead of you or the people who will follow you? Were you there when I put this all into place? Do you know anything at all? And the message of the book of Job, unfortunately, although true, it's very humbling. It basically comes to this. God is great, you're not, don't mess with me. I owe you no explanation. That's what's there. That's what the text actually says. And there is truth to that text. But I'll tie it in today with another story. You all know that what we read in the scriptures, we read of the Gospels, are basically the stories, the preaching of the first disciples for years and years and decades until they ultimately were written down. And the oldest of those written accounts is the Gospel of Mark. And Mark was told by more than one, at least from the 12 who traveled with Jesus, there was this frightening, awesome, don't mess with God experience that we went through. He tells the story. We were once on the Lake of Galilee, and this storm came up and scared the you-ever-loving you-know-what out of us. And for those of you who will ever have the opportunity, and I hope someday we'll be able to do so beyond the world of terrorism, to travel back to that land, because the Lake of Galilee is notorious to this very day. Storms come up, they're devastating, they're powerful, and they disappear. They're incredibly dangerous. And for anyone who gets an archaeological type of magazine like I do, that's my junk reading, they're always finding these great ships in the bottom of the Lake of Galilee. You know why? Because so many of them ended up down there. Okay? It was that dangerous. A traveler through there in her diary wrote, "It's not unusual to see terrible squalls hurl themselves at you, even though the sky was perfectly clear a minute ago." That's how quick and dangerous these storms come up. And I don't know if any of you have ever been in this ship in a storm. I was for one night. Anyone ever had that experience? Ever? You have, okay? I was on the Leonardo da Vinci, my class going over to Rome, actually. They used to make us go like cattle. They'd herd us on a ship. And we got caught in a storm. It wasn't even a big storm, they told us. You wouldn't tell by me, because I was so scared I never got out of my room. You have an incredible experience of how small and insignificant you are if you were on a ship that's being tossed around like a tennis ball. Okay? And it didn't help the fact that the Leonardo da Vinci, and we found this out later, for those of you who are old enough, this will mean something to you, younger people, not so much. The Da Vinci was the sister ship of the Andrea Doria. Okay, so those of you who are old enough to remember that name, those of you who are young, the Andrea Doria is probably the second most notable disaster at sea in this century after the Titanic. That's fair to say, or the last century anyway. But scholars point out that Jesus is on this ship, and the memory of it is he talked to the storm as if the storm were alive. He talked to the storm as if it had personality. And even though I'm not the scholar to do this, but they said if you looked at the text, and if you read what I just read to you, and you go a couple of chapters earlier and reread the story of Jesus exorcising a demon out of a person, the same exact words. And before you make fun of ancient people because they gave personality to storms, may I remind you of some personalities that we have experienced whose names were Harvey and Maria and Irma and Katrina. We give them personality too. And I don't know the name of the volcano that's ripping apart Hawaii, but if it has a nickname, it doesn't have a nickname, it should. But there's something else going on here, and this is what I want to share with you. This event, as they experienced, as they're trapped in that boat, as they are scared to death, as they don't know where they're going, as they're being bounced around, when does the storm finally cease? When they finally turn to him. When does the storm finally give them or take away the terror that they're experiencing? When they realize he's with them, the storm is on its journey to being calm. To voyage in life and to voyage with Christ does not mean you won't have storms in your life. It just means he travels with us. That's the important thing to remember, that we're not alone. And what does this say to us? A reminder that as a parish heading into its 260th year, as a church heading into just about the same time, we as Christians, as a country in this particular shape we are in right now, it is the presence of Christ in our lives who will give peace in the storms of sadness and the storms of anxiety. When you are facing a sadness that is overwhelming, when you think you are utterly alone and everything is as dark as it can be, look aside. He journeys with us. I don't have to survive this alone because I'm not alone. And there is so much true to worry about. We worry about it with good reason. Ourselves, our world, our kids, the world they're going to grow up in, our economy, our jobs, our marriages, our culture, the people we love, the people we see breaking down, our church that's about to go through another general convention with more screaming and yelling at each other. All of this. As anxious as I am, Jesus says, be still. Why are you afraid? I'm with you. That's the meaning of faith. Faith is easy when your life is perfect and you read the words out of a prayer book and you feel wonderful and warm and fuzzy. Faith is real when you are traveling through life and everything comes at you and you feel virtually overwhelmed. That's when faith really matters. I think of the colonists from 259 years ago, and as I wrote, those people, whoever they were, the nameless couple that got together and they celebrated Eucharist out in the open here. Little did they know that their country, their Their whole political system was going to implode. They would be caught up in a war. Many of them would die because of it. Their church would break its union with the Church of England. It would be an extremely difficult time for them, yet they did not lose faith. They kept faith. And what I ask each of you, realizing who you are as part of this parish, part of the story that was written 259 years ago, it started anyway. Keep faith. You're not alone. The Lord says to us, why are you afraid? I'm with you. Amen.
Amen.